back on this Hemi. Remember this guy? This cylinder is hammered. So I got an update for you. So I had my customer come down and check out his block. He wasn't liking those scratches either, and I told him I seen that when he dropped it off before I even honed it. But you know, kind of went back and forth. First he offered me his car for sale. I wasn't interested. He's kind of on a tight budget, but we're gonna bore this thing. So the pistons just showed up. Let's check them out. Check out these pistons. What the heck? I think I got ripped off. This is actually how I got the piston in this little tiny box. Engine Tech sells this piston. It's a single oversized piston with a set of rings. All right, guys, you can start laughing. So this guy was on an extreme budget. We kind of went back and forth. I gave him the option of doing it right and then not doing anything at all. He kind of went with that, and I was like, no, this thing's not going to work at all. So we ended up just going with punching this back hole out. This is actually the second block this guy has. The first one he thinks is cracked, so we got this one on Marketplace or something for pretty cheap, but that's why he got it for pretty cheap. That back hole's pretty beat up. So it's not right, but it's going to get this guy back on the road. He's on an extreme budget. It was either scrap the car, sell it for pennies on the dollar, or do what I'm doing now. So at least you'll have a running and driving vehicle. So I'm going to set my bore gauge up and get to honing on this block. Got my mic. Just mic this piston and see what size it actually is. Piston mic 3-inch 936 thousandths and 5/10. I'm going to set my bore gauge to 3-inch 938 thousandths, and that'll give my piston 1.5 piston to wall clearance. Never believe that sticker you see on the box. This says made in Taiwan, but these pistons are actually made in Mexico. They're Marosas, and these rings are made in USA. They're Hastings rings, and they're a Molly ring. So never believe what the box says. Always look what's in the box to actually see what you get, because you know sometimes you get a big box like this and there's only one piston in it. You never know. I just got my bore gauge set. See how much we have to hone out of this guy. It's about 19 thousandths, and then I got my roughing stones on here. So let's start hogging away at this cylinder. So the stones I'm using are 70 grit, and they take a lot of material out very quick. This thing will be honed in no time. I just took about 5 thousandths out. There's still a little mark in the back. My machine. It's a Sunnen CK10. It's a little bit older, but it works awesome. So right here we have a load meter. It tells you how much load the motor has on it. It lets you know if the cylinders are straight. And there's no clowning around on this machine. Has a couple other features. It has this dwell deal right here. You hit this switch and it dwells at the bottom. And then also, let me turn that off. And it also has a dwell button where if you hit the button, it'll dwell at the bottom and it'll open the bottom up. Because a lot of engines with a lot of miles, they get a lot of taper at the bottom, and you want to straighten that out and fix the cylinder up, and those dwell buttons really help out. All right, let's check this thing out. I've taken about 6 thousandths out of this cylinder. And those lines are already gone. There's just a little faint couple little marks right here at the top that aren't going to affect anything. And on this side, there's just a little tiny check mark right there, but that thing will be gone in a couple more thousandths. So this thing's just honing away. I got my load meter up here. We're right about at 60. The cylinder is fairly straight. That needle would be bouncing a lot if it was out around or tapered. And then I got my my stop set. This will take out about 10. It says 20, but it'll take about 10 thousandths out when this thing hits 0. So it has a stop. And when it hits 0, it shuts the machine down. So you can kind of set this thing up walk away, do something else, and come back to it, and it won't overhone your cylinder if you set this properly. All right, let's check this out. I'm done rough honing it. We're at 2/1000ths till we hit 20 over. And then now we're gonna do the most important part, which is chamfer the cylinders. So I'm gonna chamfer the top of the cylinder. That helps gets the piston and rings in the hole. And then the most important, I'm gonna use this cartridge roll on a die grinder, and I'm gonna chamfer the bottom of the cylinders here. That prevents the oil film from being scraped off the piston. I'll show you a little demonstration actually what happens if you do not do that. So here's your piston here. And when it's running, it gets the oil on that piston skirt. And if you don't chamfer the bottom of the cylinder, I know this is the top of the cylinder, but this is only for the demonstration. So you have a bunch of oil on that piston skirt, and if you don't chamfer that cylinder, every time it pops out the bottom of the cylinder, it gets scraped, all that oil gets scraped off, just like that. And if you don't do that, if you don't chamfer it, it scrapes all that oil off, and it causes premature wear on this piston skirt. It's just something you have to do, and if your machine shop's not doing that, they're either lazy or for some reason don't know, and you definitely need that bottom of the cylinder chamfered. And also, if you put a dirty piston in a bore, that happens. So let's chamfer the bottom of this cylinder. Literally takes 2 seconds. There you go. Now I'm switching from this 70 grit to this 220 grit. Thou and a half to go. You always want to take your time when you get to this couple thou to go. Hone a little bit, check. Nobody wants a 25 over or with that 20 over piston. Doesn't work good. All right, I'm a thou to go. Now I'm switching to a 280. I was at a 220. Now this final process, final stones I'm using is gonna be a 280. Half a thou to go. Alright, we're right about at size. I'm gonna let this cylinder sit for about 20 minutes. Here's my Sunnen pin press. I got my stand all set up, my driver, and the rod and piston I'm pressing off. All right, here we go. Guys, always wear glasses. I got all my teeth still, so that's good. I'm missing a little piece of the piston. I'll get this thing apart though. All right, round two. Almost. There you go. I got that rod off that piston. I ended up breaking a driver when that piston flew off the pin press. I just thought I'd show you the struggle. Sometimes stuff happens when pistons break and stuff doesn't go your way, but I got it off. Now it's time to hang it. My rod heater, it has a spot for the piston. You have to set the stop for the pin, and then there's 2 spots for the connecting rods. You can do 2 at a time. And so you set the rod in here, and there's a coil in here. It gets red hot. So this small end has to expand to fit on the pin. So I'm gonna set my rod in here, heat it up, and get this piston on. All right, those coils are red hot. Now it's time to just wait. You want to put a little bit of oil on this pin and on the piston. You don't want to put any oil on the leading edge because it can cool the rod down as you're trying to put it on too quick. So you just lube up this end and in the piston. So the purpose of doing this small end of the rod has an interference fit with this pin about a thou and a half or so. It just kind of depends. And we're expanding the small end so it'll go right on the piston. And then once it cools down, it's not going anywhere. I'm going to let that piston cool off. There are a couple tenths to go. Like I was saying, I let this sit a little bit because it got a little bit warm. Not anything crazy, but I let it sit and get back to temperature. Now we can finish up honing this thing. All right, just finished honing this thing. Nice. Perfect. So now I'm going to give this thing another 3 strokes at light pressure and then move to the plateau stones. So I forgot to record, but I just gave the cylinder 10 strokes with these plateau brushes and finished up the cylinder. Well, this is the final product, no scratches. So this cylinder is good to go. Here's the block, I just pulled it out of the wash. It's not perfect, but it's gonna work. Here's that cylinder, it had a little bit of pitting in there. You can still kind of see it. It's not that bad. Wow, that cylinder looks awesome. Oh, and here's that piston I just got out of the rod heater. This thing's good to go. Nice and free and oiled up. This cylinder is going to work great for the guy. So what I was doing earlier was chamfering the bottom of the cylinders right here. And what that does is it keeps oil film on this piston skirt. So every time the engine runs, this piston pops out of the bottom of the cylinder, gets a little oil on this skirt, and then goes back up. And if you don't chamfer that, it just scrapes all that oil film off the piston skirt. And that piston needs to ride on a film of oil for it to last longer. And if you don't do that, it just scrapes it, and then it's running dry up and down the cylinder, and it's going to wear out prematurely. The piston skirt's the same as a rod or a main bearing. It's riding on an oil film, and it's riding on pretty much a cushion instead of riding metal on metal. You know, if a rod and a main bearing, if there's no oil, it's riding metal on metal. You'll scuff up the bearing, spin a bearing, and then same with the piston. If there's no oil film, it's going to scuff on the bores and wear everything out prematurely. That's why nowadays a lot of newer engines, they have a coated skirt piston. So like on startup, there's no oil pressure for a half a second, no oil film really, and it's going to ride on that coating until the oil gets on it and does what it needs to do. Hey guys, I forgot to tell you, if you guys buy an engine or maybe even a car and it says it's been bored, you know, in the ad, make sure it's all the cylinders and not just one. That's pretty much going to wrap this video up. I appreciate you guys following me along on this build, and I'll see you guys in the next one.